The point is, we are looking at a global matrix. We are looking at a holographic code. We're looking at something whose memory transcends any individual culture. And that's why we have got to pay attention and ask the important questions. Why do we have this here? Who left it to us? And who knew what before? And somehow, why don't we remember what our own heritage has been trying all these years patiently to tell us? When we began this, one of the major questions I had was, well, if you are finding connections with the Earth, then it should show up not only in terms of the numbers, but it should also show up in terms of the forms. That is when I noticed that Silbury Hill, which is south of a place called Avebury, also seems to have a very curious resemblance to the Tholus at Cydonia. As you know, there is this spiral that winds around the Tholus, and here, if you take this cone and you include this enclosure as the actual base, all right, the morphology is eerily identical, including this spiral path that seems to wind down to Silbury Hill, which is the largest man-made earthen mound in all of Europe. Well, Alexander Thom was the one who measured the megalithic yard, which is 2.72 feet, British feet, and now, of course, we don't think that's a coincidence. In fact, that, put together with the methodologies described in Carl's book, make it very clear that the British foot, as a fundamental unit of measurement of tetrahedral geometry, is not only British, it is the unit that was used the world over. It was just called by different names. And it had exactly the same length. And it had to have exactly the same length, or else you could not get the 5 or 10 or 12 decimal precision in the computation of the constants and the grid vectors and all that. That locks you in. The discovery of a global grid now linking these two specific worlds and apparently deriving from a single source, something that occurred at Cydonia, has profound and important implications for us all. Not the least of which is that our weights, our measures, our measuring systems of time, of length, all units of historical reference in the record must now be re-examined to possibly trace their influences and their evolution from some distant point of contact between this world and another. But in the midst of our grasping the enormous implications of this set of discoveries, something else happened, something so amazing that even those of us on the team who have lived with us now for 9 years could not quite believe our eyes, because in the midst of central England, at a place called Avebury and Silbury Hill, some of our team members have discovered and now partially proved perhaps the ultimate terrestrial connection, an analog right here on Earth to Cydonia itself. North of Silbury Hill, which is up here, there is this circular henge monument, the biggest one in England, called Avebury. It has a ditch here, and it has a raised area inside and a mound around the interior, or sorry, the exterior. And normally, you know, you wouldn't think twice about it, except that one of our key people brought this data to my attention. This monument happens to have 2 ancient stone circles. Most of them are now gone. And when Thom measured them many years ago, guess what? They are aligned off north by 19.5 degrees, which should be pretty familiar by now, and there should be a kind of a warm glow that, we got another one. Oh, it gets better. Remember I promised Mohammed we were going to give him interesting discoveries? Well, here's discovery number 2, major discovery number 2. David Percy, our esteemed producer, who is now up in the booth saying, when is he going to be done? When is he going to wind up? When he looked at this particular photograph some months back, noticing Silbury Hill and Avebury, he flashed on my NASA briefing video from Cydonia, from actually NASA Lewis of Cydonia, and the comparison I made between Silbury Hill and the Tholus at Cydonia, and suddenly he had a vision that not just metaphorically, but maybe actually this could be an analog. And this represents, well, let me show you what he thought it might represent. It might represent this. Okay? Here's the crater. And on the rim, there is our little guy, the tetrahedral pyramid, okay? Now, let's go forward. Here's the Avebury mound outside, the ring of earth pile up. I mean, they dug out this ditch. What were they doing digging a mile-wide hole with a ring and a ditch and a mound in the middle of a plain in England? Well, David's flash said, what if they were replicating the monuments of Mars? What if the Avebury circle was to represent the crater and Silbury was to represent the Tholus? And he did an overlay. He went to the copy store and he did one of these transparent maps, got an ordnance survey map from the British military services, raised and lowered the size and scaling until he got an exact match, and lo and behold, this is what he got. And the angles and positions of ancient features, including where the cliff would be and where the tetrahedral pyramid would be, and angles to other key things in this vicinity, all seem to match, including the very size of Silbury Hill in terms of its exterior moat in reference to the Tholus. Well, this, of course, is unbelievable, but, and I want you to look at this. Here's now is the crater on Mars. Here's the tetrahedral pyramid. You're now looking from this direction at Avebury. Here's the ring here, which it would be up like here. And notice here, there's a mound and a gap. And here's the gap, and there's the separation, and there's the mound, and that's, of course, tetrahedral pyramid. There is something at Avebury which corresponds exactly geometrically. It's a raised portion of the circular pile-up earthen moat around this, corresponding exactly numerically to the tetrahedral pyramid at Cydonia on Mars. And when we do this, get this. You take the grid latitude from Carl of the pyramid, of the Avebury circle, all right? Grid longitude, we get its grid vector, and what does the grid vector turn out to be? It turns out to be, hold on to your hats, the average between really 2.7182828282 and the tetrahedral ratio E, the sphere tetrahedron ratio of 2.72069 to 1. That's what that number means, and they positioned, whoever they were, Avebury exactly there in relation to Silbury Hill to be the first means of decoding the meaning of the monuments of Earth.